What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Lost Records Journal Podcast, Play One vs. Lost Records Focus Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Adnan. My co-host, filling in for Adam because he's not here. He couldn't make it, unfortunately. Abby's here from Fireside with A&A. Abby, hello.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Of course, very happy to have you here. And we obviously have a very special guest on wherever she appears on the screen because our layout's a bit different from what the final product's going to be. Very wonderful guest, our second guest on the Lost Records Journal podcast. Obviously, we've had the lovely Olivia Lepore on. Now we have the lovely Amelia Sargisson on, and Amelia was mocap and voiceover for Nora in Lost Records Bloom and Rage. Amelia, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
No, we're so excited to have you in here, and obviously we've got like a lot of things to talk to you about Nora, and Nora has captured the hearts and minds of many people, including Abby, who watches a lot of her TikToks on the moment that she gets, and she's definitely keen to ask you about singing, among many other things. So, but before we get into things as well, just to start with, guys, if you are new here, please do consider dropping subscribe on the channel, turn notifications, like the video, share your friends. Helps get access to all the podcast episodes as soon as they become available. Helps keep up to date with all our content. And the Lost Records Journal is available on all podcast services. So we're available on Apple Podcasts, we're available on Spotify. So do go and check us out there. Go and follow us because you get instant access to the episodes, including ones like this where we have Amelia on. So Amelia, welcome. Obviously, for people listening, the game is out. Please be aware we will be going to spoiler territory, so that is your final warning here. Go and play the game, come back, then you can hear Amelia's wonderful insights about this project. And just a very quick FYI as well, Amelia, like many of the other actors, including Olivia, has not played the full game. Obviously, the game was shot in different processes, and Amelia is still catching up among many other things with the game, so we will be talking about Amelia's experience among many other things. So don't think that we're going to go straight into the abyss and ask her questions about that, because Amelia is not completely familiar with that. And it's very important for us to talk to Amelia about her experiences. So Amelia, the most cliche way of always starting an interview, I always do my research. Abby's doing her research. We know you have a big background in theatre. I watched you in A Fellow recently as well on Apple TV. So I was kind of like getting a bit more well-versed with you. But who is Amelia Sargisson? Let us know who you are.
Oh, who am I? What a profound question to start us off. I think probably storyteller would best describe me, and the sort of many tentacled artistic pursuits that I'm engaged with at any single time. I was born and raised in Montreal. I went to theatre school in Toronto, Canada, and have since had the great privilege of working all over the country on stages from the West Coast to the East Coast. And as you rightly say, I have a very strong background in theater. I've done mostly theater. But then when that sort of came to terrifying halt with the pandemic, I started to branch out into audiobooks, video games, and a little bit of TV as well. And really fell in love with the intimacy of the medium, and I'm hungry to do more of that now as well. So yeah, I'd say that's me in a nutshell.
I like that. I've never had that kind of like introduction in terms of being like a storyteller. And it's kind of always insightful to get into your experience, because obviously with a big theatre background, I was just wondering, what's your kind of like acting style? Like, are you someone who uses like Meisner, for example, or do you like have a different way of training, like just in terms of like what we've seen? Because obviously I think most people are familiar with Lost Records, what you've done in that, but I imagine with a theatre background, you do all kinds of different roles and there's different acting techniques. So what kind of would be the best way you would describe your acting style?
I would say my style is something that I have both organically and very rigorously developed over my many years doing it. And it's a bouquet of all the different things to which I've been exposed. I had an amazing training at Toronto Metropolitan University, which at the time was run by this incredible theater educator named Perry Schneiderman. And we did everything there from really kind of intense, realistic props work, sort of from Stella Adler and the New York School, to clown work with Leah Cherniak, Red Nose Clown, which was perhaps one of the most terrifying units, because in clown, you're supposed to look right out at the audience and you can't ignore that they're there. And the sort of blank stares that you often see looking up at you can be very daunting. But I have really found that sort of regardless, and I do such a range of things, from brand new Canadian plays to the classics, to the, Western classics anyway. And really, I find that across all these different styles and forms, many of the same tools are applicable. And ultimately, I think my own style is one of, I think this is what all actors are always trying to do, but is telling the truth. And whatever you need to do to sort of imaginatively and spiritually put yourself inside the story to convey it as truthfully as possible.
Yeah.
But
As a
nice.
stage actor too, was it strange to kind of be in isolation in the booth as a voice actor? Or did you get to record?
It was so weird. I mean, fortunately, and one of the things I loved about this process was that most of the time, I would say probably 90% of the time, we did the mocap first. So we had the
Okay.
experience of playing the scenes together as an ensemble and embodying the circumstances before then going into the booth and laying down all of the accompanying dialogue. And my process is to be off book for those mocap days, even if we're not recording the lines then, because it just helps me inhabit the situation better if I know the words and am sort of in the mindset of it all. So I always had sort of the specter or the ghost of that in my body by the time I was in the booth. But it is so strange to reply to no one. And I think that's the part that, like, you have to feed yourself, you have to prompt yourself with whatever it is you're responding to. You have to sort of see the person there on the other end of the conversation. And that's obviously very different from the immediacy of theater, where you're living it and reliving it in real time with your fellow actors every night.
No, absolutely. And obviously, I think we'll come on to the booth stuff because obviously I'd love to talk to you about Philip Bache and the experience you had with him. But before we do that as well, I think a good entry point, because I'm going to pull you in a little bit here, which is the fact that you went to Don't Nod Montreal's 5th anniversary celebrations and also the launch party of Lost Records. I wanted to know, what was your experience like going there? Because obviously you reconnected with Olivia Lepore there. Obviously you saw a lot of the developers you'd already worked with. So Luke was there, Michel was there, but then also a lot of the Don't Nod team was there that you hadn't met. What was that experience like going to that launch party?
Oh, it was so much fun, and it was so generous of them to invite us. They really put together a fabulous night. But yeah, Mary Poiliot, who was our principal cinematic designer, introduced me to a bunch of the team that I had never met. And it was really so fun. There was one person, I think her name was Natalie, an animator, but she said she recognized me the minute I walked in just from my physicality, because of course she probably spent hours and hours and years really like studying my movements. And it's interesting, my partner is a sound designer and has recently done a couple of documentary films, and similarly spends hours and hours with the subjects and hearing their voice and watching them move. And then we went to the premiere screenings in Toronto, and he had the same experience of saying, like, you don't know me, but I know you so well. And so I was on the reverse end of that. So that was really neat just to get a sense of how huge the team is. There must be, for every one person in the cast, there must be at least like 10 people on the in the behind the scenes working to bring the project to life. And it's all like so specific. They have such highly specific roles and departments. And I met another wonderful person who had done quality assessment on the game and had spent hours and hours just making sure that there are no glitches and bugs. And so it really opened my eyes as to just, I think I had a sense that there was like an army behind us the whole time as we were making it, but then I actually got to meet some of the soldiers, if you will, and it was really fun.
No, absolutely. And that's amazing. And I wanted to ask you something, because I kind of stole it from the interview that we did with Olivia, because obviously I think when people watched it, the interview, more and more of Swann Holloway became present during the interview, where people started seeing her personality, and it was very similar to it. And I think Olivia as well, she didn't realize, for example, because we kind of feed her information in terms of like the stuff that's come out post game. I kind of wanted to single out Michel here, for example. We love Michel. I absolutely adore him. And he'll come back in this later. But I just kind of wanted to know, when you met him then after the project, so when Michel's spoken in interviews, he always says that his main protagonist, either Max Caulfield from Life is Strange or even Swann Holloway, for example, he'll project himself onto that character in the writing process. So him and Jean-Luc Carner will do that. I'm just curious, did you start seeing shades of like Swann on Michel, or like in terms of his personality? Because he's always said that he sees Swann as a positive introvert, and I could see him in
Mhm.
some of those photos and the video. And I was just wondering if you saw that now after the projects come out, that there's shades of Swann Holloway there.
Totally. And I would say even throughout. And one of the real gifts of working on this project is that the characters are so real and they're so
Mhm.
layered and they're so nuanced. And I think that is absolutely because they are inspired by real people and elements of real
Mm.
people. And that was imminently apparent to me in the writing. Like, I knew, okay, they had a very clear picture of Nora, or the Nora is a composite of very real people. And yes, certainly in the perceptiveness, the insightfulness, the sort of soft spokenness, I see lots of Michel and Swann. That very artful eye
No,
probably being the most prominent characteristic.
absolutely, no, that's amazing. And I'm glad that you can see that as well, because I think Olivia was like, she's like, oh, I see it now, like when she's on here, which is always quite nice to have as an experience. And obviously, I want to really talk to you about Nora as well, because obviously that's really exciting. But
Mm.
before we do that as well, I saw that party. I saw Nora Kelly. We'll come on to her later as well. Saw Nora Kelly playing, saw the music and everything. And I'm not going to ask you about Luke, because we know Luke's like a metalhead and he loves like thrashing in the mosh pit among many other things. But I'm just wondering, didn't the main man, Mr. Michel Koch, bust any moves on the dance floor?
I'm trying to remember. I mean, when she did a reprise of the song at the end of the night, and we got a little mosh pit going,
Oh
a
wow!
a corporate mosh pit, if you will, so a tame one. Those were the words of actually somebody else, not me. But I thought it was an apt description. I think Michel was at least bobbing his head, if not, fully in there with us. Yeah.
Did you get to sing with her too?
I had this
Just like Nora?
fantasy. I'm going to confess, I had this fantasy that she would call me up on the stage, which of course I didn't want to happen because I am not a singer, as I'm sure you can tell from my own version of the song in the game. But I was like, imagine if she was like, Nora, get up here and sing with me. And then I would have to do it and be bad and it would be awkward, but fun. But I don't think she even knew who I was. So I was totally anonymous and just got to be an adoring fan and enjoy the music. But yes, I was spared having to do a live rendition. Oh my gosh.
That's so funny. Well, we'll have to plant the seed. So everyone go tell Nora Kelly.
No, well, I'm gonna find that footage somewhere. I might have to get Olivia Lepore to tell us where the footage is, because I feel like either he's in the mosh pit or he's filming it Swan style. But
Okay.
as I said, Michelle will come back into this. And just actually before that, 'cause I was going to bring Nora Kelly in later, and I
Mm.
know Abby wants to speak about the singing, which we'll talk about later on. But there was a mocap photo with you and Nora Kelly, where
Yes.
you met her. What was the
Yes.
experience like meeting her? Because obviously, you play the character Nora. She has a name Nora. That's just a
Yeah.
coincidence. But like, what was it like just meeting her?
Oh, it was so fun to meet her. She's such a talented artist. She's also an amazing painter, I discovered when I started following her on Instagram. And then it turns out that we have a friend in common. A friend of mine who's a stage manager went to high school with Nora Kelly. So it was like one of those 1 degree of separation moments.
Mhm.
Or maybe even elementary school. Actually, I think they went to elementary school together because my friend
Okay.
Scarlett sent me a picture of them like in a costume from a play they did in like kindergarten or something adorable. Anyway, maybe it was a ballet. Really cool person. And on the days when we were recording the concert, doing the mocap for the concert, she was also there to support us with like the fingering for the guitar and teaching us the chords and kind of side coaching us through all of that. So I was so grateful to her for that and for just helping us bring more detail and authenticity to those moments. Luke is also a pretty great musician, and one of our set managers as well is in a band. So we actually had like a lot of great coaches on hand for that, but Nora foremost among them.
Oh, that's amazing. And we'll come on to that a little bit later, because obviously I know Abby's itching about the singing part, and I know I can't not stop her from talking about it. And obviously, yeah, Luke is a great musician as well. My co-host Adam is a composer and is working towards that, and he always
Oh
takes dig at
wow.
Luke's. He's like he's like, bass isn't music. And I'm like, Adam, like, stop insulting the man. It's like, let him play his bass. And Luke has always found a good spirit with it, which is always nice as well. But I think, like, let's start with the elephant room. How did you end up getting involved with this project, and then landing the role of Nora?
I did a self-tape. Just on the other side of this wall in my bedroom, where the walls are gray, and I thought it would be a good backdrop. And I had to do 2 scenes. There was a teenager scene and an adult scene. One of my best friends in the world, Dina Aziz, read with me. I had to sing for the audition. So and I think they had sent like a reference song, but what I ended up doing was I learned that song and then I ripped the vocals from it and I played the back track of music off my phone so that I had something like a bed of music to sing over in the audition. I slung my guitar over my shoulder so that at least you could see the strap. And yeah, and I just went for it in that self-tape. And I remember, even though it was years ago now, but I remember how satisfying and challenging it was to do the teenage Nora and the adult Nora. And one of the earliest things I remember was their description of the well of pain in the adult Nora and her efforts to conceal it, which weren't always successful. And I just really connected to that really deeply. But, you do about 1 million self-tapes a week and you send them off and you expect never to hear anything. So that's kind of what I did with this one. And then I remember I was buying a present for my darling little niece when I got the call from my agent saying that I had an in-person callback for this project, which I think it would have been in 2021. No. Yeah, maybe 2021. So there weren't many in-person auditions happening, or maybe it was early 2022. Forgive me, I don't really remember. But it was right after the holidays. So, but it was still kind of unusual to be in a room with people acting. Yeah. And these were group auditions. So we were in a heat of people and they were doing chemistry reads essentially. And I read with 2 different heats, but Andrea was in both of them with me and we were just like, clink. Nat was in one of them as well. And I don't know if I think Olivia was in the first one. So basically we were all there, Avengers Unite. And I just had so much fun. In that callback, and the whole team was there, but they were so generous and smiley and they were giving really great notes. And then a couple of weeks later, I heard that I had booked the part, and it's just a little miracle. Like, it's just a little miracle whenever the stars align and you find yourself with a group of beautiful artists working on a story that they've put so much thought and care into it. I can't help but think of it as like a small miracle. So nice. Yeah, but that's how that happened, was through the sort of regular channels of like self-tape to callback.
And it usually plays out like that with some of these projects as well. And I'll come on to the part with Andrea in a moment, but I just wanted to ask you something because since the game's come out and stuff, Michel's done interviews and he's done one with this podcast called the Gone Gold one. And in there as well, I don't have the full quote, but he did say like Natalie Liconti auditioned for Nora, but then they shifted people around. So they basically said that they were really set on you and Andrea being the 2 characters you were, but then obviously Olivia had auditioned for Kat and Natalie had auditioned for Nora. I'm just curious, like having known Natalie as you have done on the set and stuff, could you see shades of Nora?
Oh, totally. 100%.
Okay.
I think, what we tried to define early on is that Nora was kind of all bluster, but no bite. And Kat ran much deeper ultimately in terms of her kind of despair and rage and sorrow, and that there was a real fearless recklessness. And so ultimately, I think that's what made each of us suited to these roles, is that I could connect to that kind of almost class clown, want to be in the spotlight. But then, Nora actually has such a beautiful arc and she really transforms. And after she learns about Kat's illness, she doesn't need that anymore. And I think we see a kind of more, what's the right word? Not chastened, but mature version of her emerge over the course of the story, even before we meet her as an adult. Whereas, yeah, Kat's the real rebel. Nora's kind of the poser rebel.
I like that
But
interpretation.
all that to
That is really
say,
interesting.
in terms of having that kind of rebellious streak or that, fuck the world quality, I think we both have it. And
Yeah.
and Nat just went deep with it, whereas Nora stayed sort of more surface with it, if you will.
Nice. No, I like that interpretation. It's really cool. And just in this as well, because obviously I've got something from Michel. I just wanted to hit it's a twofold question, but I thought I'd just read it out to you. So Michel said, but what we did after they chose the audition tapes to make sure it works is we had them come on site for an in-person session to see if there was any chemistry between them. And yeah, the first time we saw Amelia and Andrea together, we had the feeling that they knew each other for 10 years or more. So we knew that it was for them. Even if they didn't know each other, they just knew each other for a few minutes. It was really two best friends, and it was working. It was working so well. So basically, off that as well, I wanted to ask you, what's it like when you hear praise like that from your game director, who obviously will send you amazing praise because we know Michel on set, but does it privately in an interview, and you hear that praise. And then secondly, just your interpretation. Why do you think you and Andrea just connected so easily? Why it was just effortless?
Well, firstly, I'm very moved to hear those words from Michel. And, it's being an actor is so tough, and you spend so much time in the unknown and not knowing if the work lands, not knowing if you're going to get the part, not knowing if they liked you, quote unquote. So to have some evidence or affirmation that they were seeing something that matched their vision and that delighted them, that's really just encouraging. And let that be a lesson to all of the actors out there that you don't even know the effect that you may be having. And to your second question with Andrea, I don't know. I mean, she's such a fine artist and a real deep well. And I think what I loved about her in that callback session was that she was such a responsive and generous partner. And when I threw out a crazy offer to start headbanging, she just was right there with me, she's the master of the yes and I think we saw that in one another and it drew us together. And also sometimes those callback situations, the stress is high. You don't really know what you're doing. It kind of feels like you're flailing about. And if a buddy's going to jump into the deep end to flail with you, you're just like, thank you, sister. So I think there was a bit of that going on. And she shares a name with my sister. My real life sister is also Andrea. So I think for me too, there was just some sort of cosmic layer of oh, I have known this person forever. So
Absolutely.
oh, I took it down, but there was here, usually over my desk, there's a picture of me and my sister.
Oh,
So I guess I just love an Andrea, but Andrea Carter is a really special Andrea. And yeah, she's a great partner, just a great acting partner, great, just so generous and willing to sort of match and build on any wild offer you put out there.
No, I'm glad to hear that because we obviously got the vibe when we played the game, and it's
Oh,
we could
good. I'm
see
so
it's just
glad.
those two just gelled together, which is amazing. And we'll come on to Andrea and the other actors in the mocap part, but I kind of want to bring you to the VO booth because obviously you work with Philip Bache, who's the voiceover director. I've done obviously my Life is Strange series. I've spoken to about 20 plus actors who worked with Philip Bache, so he's got a very interesting style. I'm just kind of curious when you go into that as well, because obviously you have a background in theatre, so you're well versed with different roles. But with young Nora, for example, did you feel like you were being more theatrical with some of the performances because we see the energy that she exasperates?
The melodrama.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. I think there was an invitation to do that a little bit, and because she loves the spotlight, like there were with some lines I would throw out like these wild offers of like some sort of old-timey voice, like she's talking like this, and for the most part, God love him, Phil was pretty game for that. And we kind of developed this wonderful vocabulary around, because we also didn't want her ever to tip into caricature or to become too much,
Mhm.
so we had this language that we developed together of like, there's the genie, there's the Robin Williams version, and then every now and then you need to put the genie in the bottle. And so Phil would often be the one
Nice.
to say, let the genie out, and then Michelle would be like, okay, put the genie in the bottle. But it was great that we found our way through that, and how to navigate that. And yeah, and ultimately I think what I was striving to do is, especially in a teenager who's maybe kind of performing in that way or outsizing themselves in that way, I tried to always keep it tethered to her anxiety and her fear of being
Mhm.
unloved, and how hard it had been for her that her mom just took off, and she had a dad and so-called step monster, with a new kid, and felt sort of sidelined. And so
Mhm.
it was in her friend group that she found the love that was missing elsewhere. But I think there was always there's that little bit of edge of like, but don't forget about me.
Mhm.
So anyway, so that was my hope, was that even if it tipped into theatrics, it was still grounded by that broken heart.
Yeah, and you touched on Nora having this undercurrent of sadness, especially as an adult,
Mm.
that sorrow. How did you approach playing her as an adult? I'm not sure if you knew kind of like what the trauma was necessarily that they went through to have them all meet up together, but how did you approach that going
Mm.
into the booth or going into sessions?
Mhm. I don't know. I think I find loss and regret are very easy to access. They're very kind of elemental human experiences, and
Mhm.
I relate it. I feel like I understand, especially looking back on the folly of youth and the decisions that you made then, what it is to rue those, and the consequences here, and for these women, were pretty extreme. And there's also such a part of like, can they even believe what happened? Can they trust their own experience of what happened? And surrendering to the mystery of that and the power of that, I found to be kind of a very generative well, for my actor self and for my imagination, and for my heart to sort of swell with that fear and doubt. I don't know if that fully answers your
And,
question,
and
but
no, it's perfect, Amelia. And I just kind of want to bounce off it because obviously you said that with young Nora, it was kind of like you ground her. You don't want to make her a bit more of like a caricature. So it's like, she's funny, but she has to have that kind of grounded essence. But then
Mhm.
even when we've played the game, we've seen like adult Nora does seem to show us some kinds of trauma that, that there's a reaction of like what's happened in the game. She's quite deeply impacted.
Mhm.
And as you said, as you explained that way, it's like you see all these different things. I'm just curious, when you approached adult Nora, did you go and look for maybe other like things that you could project onto her, like other inspirations, or did you kind of feel like you wanted to make her your own kind of thing? So you just, what they give you in terms of the documents, that's the character profile for her, and then whatever your performance brings out naturally, that's what it is. Or did you feel like you wanted to kind of like look at other things where it's like, oh, that character has a bit of trauma, I can kind of learn a bit more from that.
I felt that the story here was rich enough that I could just build on the foundation that the writers and the creators had offered from that, you know, formative 1995 summer. Like I didn't really,
Hmm.
there was a lot of richness in there to mine, and I found I was just so compelled by the swing of like, she seems like the brash, untouchable one, but she's maybe the most messed up by it all ultimately. I mean,
Hmm.
that's really something that Phil wanted to capture with Nora is that her inability to just even engage with that package. So yeah, I think that I just bore into what was already there. And then the other sort of gift in the way we made this game is that it was over several years. So there was time for it all to percolate within me and for me to grow up in that time as well. And for my own process to sort of deepen and evolve. And yeah, I think that also helped with letting it really get into my bones.
Nice. No,
And like
that
dream about it, like I dreamed about this person. I I dreamed about her and I would think about her between our recording sessions, and I'd hear a song and like a snippet of lyrics. I'd be like, there was a Paul Simon song and I was like, that's grown up Nora. That's how she feels, and I would just, you start collecting these things. Like I had a little notebook and I'd just jot things down, and I love to make collages, and it's a big part of my process as well, like gathering images. And it was such a long incubation period, which I think was such a gift for helping me find, I guess, the gravitas of grown up Nora.
Yeah. What was the song or the lyric, if you remember?
Hang on, I can probably find it for you if you'll bear with me.
Yes, we have evidence. Putting our guests on the spot.
As long as you're not impatient with me, I can. I'm trying to remember if yeah, exactly. You can jump ahead.
It's okay.
But you can put it. I'll send it to you later. I'll find it.
Yes.
You can put it in your notes.
Here.
Was it here? No, because I don't remember in which batch of our time I would have done this. Sorry, friends. Can't find it right now.
Okay, so we couldn't find the lyrics. Abby has stumped Amelia and stitched her up here, but I'm going to move it away from that. But Amelia, there's one scene I want to pick you out, and I've been thinking about this for ages. I was going to message you about it, but this is the quote you put. You put the most intense fun days ever in the booth getting lost records across the finish line. And just to prove it to you as well, and I've just lost my link there, so that's always great. Got it back. It's all going apart. I literally had it open as well, and it's gone.
It's my fault.
Hang on a minute. Just gone. Yes, there we go. So I'm going to try and do this on the screen here. So in terms of the quote, it was in reference to the sequence, which I can't see if I can pull over here.
Ah, yes.
You are visibly... Yes, I just wanted to know what scene that... I just wanted to kind of get a bit of behind the scenes on that scene, because I have a funny feeling. My feeling is it's the scene when the Abyss sequence has happened with Kat and Corey. But I just wanted to kind of get what your perspective was on that scene and some behind the scenes detail, because it sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, that's correct. So Kat's collapse at our show was a wild day, a couple of days of getting that down, and then losing everybody to the Abyss. And that was unreal for me. And as a theater actress, I pride myself on having really strong vocal technique and stamina, right? Like when you're doing a 3-hour Shakespeare play, you train yourself to never run out of gas. But there was this one day in the booth when it was all the screaming and running for your life and the horror and terror. And I blew my voice out, and I couldn't believe that it had happened, because it's never happened to me before. And we only had, maybe 30 minutes left in the day anyway, but Phil called it there, and I was like beside myself. I was like, no, this has never happened. I have to finish. And he was like, just go home and take a break and we'll get it next time. But it was just, and then I called a friend of mine actually that I had gone to theater school with, because I was so worried about my instrument. I was like, what do I do for my voice? He's a speech pathologist now. And he just said, you're fine. It's just like, but it's like you just played a hockey game, and like when you slap up against the boards over and over, you're going to be tired. You just need to rest. It's okay. So all that to say, I mean, in that post, I was referring to the emotional intensity, but there was also a physical intensity to match it. And, that's another thing that I think is my peculiar way in the booth, is that, I love to do the push-ups, and I love to do the high knees, and I love to actually bring my heart rate up and get my breath activated. And even though it's just with microphones, like, embody it as much as I would in the mocap studio to hopefully convey that, the temperature of the actual body that's going through this hell.
Absolutely. Well, that's why they're called efforts,
Yeah.
because they require a lot of effort. But I wanted to talk about your movement coaching, because I see that you're a movement coach with, I think it's called the Infinity Movement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to know how your physicality and your movement background impacted your mocap experience, or what you brought into that experience from your physical background.
And sorry, just and to add on to that as well, maybe one scene which could help you, because obviously we spoke to Olivia about it, and you'll know this very well. It's the scene in the Coven in Fawn's Curse of Fawn's Rest, where they dance. So obviously Michelle has talked about that being a Buffy inspiration, and even Olivia has a theatre background, and she said that she was dancing on her tippy toes. So I thought maybe that could be a good scene for us to talk about, because obviously, as Abby has said, you've got a movement coach background experience, but then also you have a big theatre background. So were you just effortlessly just dancing away whilst everyone else was struggling?
No, everyone was great. But certainly I love when in the mocap we had those opportunities to, really use our bodies and use a fuller range of movement. And I would say for me, that was like one of the joyful discoveries of mocap, is that it's actually this very cool hybrid of theater and film, because you're in an empty garage essentially, and the set is made of like apple boxes, and so you have to use your theater imagination to build and project the whole world around you. But then you can play to the camera that's attached to your jaw this far away, so you have that kind of intimacy. You need only think the thought in order for it to be conveyed, and yet you're building the world around you as you are on stage, and creating, quote, that fourth wall, if you will, or that fully immersive environment. So, but yeah, I mean, certainly Natalie is also an athlete. She's a great boxer, and she and I would love to like hit the deck and do some push-ups before we had to do any of our chase or running sequences, because it's fun, and I think it's more faithful to real life when you just sort of turn your breath on in that way and get the heart rate up. And also they can be really long days, so you need to do something to, it's like a little defibrillator to the heart to just do 10 burpees.
Could I ask you as well, because like in that, I know Abby say as well, because the Sapphic community would love to hear this as well. In that sequence when they're dancing, obviously there's more intimacy in terms of Nora and Kat, and then also Nora and Swann, because that's where a love interest option can open up in the game. I'm just curious, when you were like doing those sequences, what was it like dancing with the two actors, so Olivia and Natalie, in those sequences? Because you still have to come, at least I imagine, within close range from mocap.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and certainly with Olivia, we had so many moments of like, lighting cigarettes and near kisses, and that's one of the perks of the job. What can I say? I love it. And Olivia is, I mean, like Andrea, like everyone on the team, just such a generous and present partner. And certainly found it so easy to be in love with her as Nora.
Nice. Actually, this will revolve around all the actors as well, and I've just thought about it, and I've never really asked as well, because someone, when we put out the graphics as well, obviously they love seeing the four of you together, but someone even pointed out saying like, Olivia's quite smaller than the other ones, and it's like, oh, and Natalie's much taller than Kat, for example. But I'm just curious with this project, because obviously Andrea Carter was pregnant during it, which was obviously incredible seeing her do the VO stuff, which was to do it in that kind of position is amazing. But I'm just curious, as an actor as well, and even with the mocap, do you have to kind of adjust yourself a little bit in terms of who you're working with? So obviously Olivia's a bit shorter, you'll be taller than her. Andrea's now pregnant, and you have to kind of accommodate for it. What kind of it goes through the process in terms of an actor's perspective in those sequences, to kind of like maybe like meet each other on eye length or kind of looking down? Do you have to adjust approach in acting? And it's very like long-winded that from me, because I'm just curious what the actor's perspective is, because I've never really considered height being a thing at first.
Yeah, that's a good question, and actually very well put, not at all long-winded. I don't remember there being much of a preoccupation around that. Like I haven't done a lot of traditional on-camera work in film or TV, but there, as I understand it, it's kind of more important to like get people on soapboxes or whatever it may be or Apple boxes, not soapboxes, heaven forfend, to get eye lines, etc. But here it felt more that we were giving them the raw data, and then they were manipulating it all anyway through the animations. And once they put our skins on us, and that it was, and they could reposition us inside of their world that they were building. So I think it didn't feel like those details were as essential to line up, because there's sort of more license for them to adjust it later.
Okay.
With the amazing team of animators,
Did you have any idea of what the characters looked like? Did you get any concept art?
Oh yeah. We had illustrations from day one, and then
nice.
And then a lot of the time they would project our skin onto our mocap skeletons on the screen. So as
they were well along at that point.
Yeah. And I could also then know, like, wait a minute, am I wearing a skirt in this scene? I definitely wouldn't squat in this way. Oh no, in this one I'm in my jean shorts. Okay, I can do whatever. Like that kind of stuff was
in the jorts.
Yeah.
Do you know with the concept art as well? Because obviously you've seen Nora, and I know the Don't Nod Montreal team has said very much like, we're just making acne normal, for example, with the character.
Yeah.
Like we're just normalizing things. I'm just kind of curious, what were you seeing like in terms of a perception? Because obviously adult Nora has a very different image and style, and obviously I think became a first trap for a lot of women who were playing this game. But then in terms of the younger Nora, I was just kind of curious what you thought about like her facial features as well. And did you pick up on the acne, or did you think it was just normal seeing it? It was like,
I mean, for me, I thought it was totally normal and totally beautiful. And, as I've already said, the fact that these characters were so real, physically as well as in terms of their character and ethos and spirit and soul. But I think what I didn't know at the time, and what I have learned since, is that maybe that kind of depiction of femininity in the video game world is quite unusual. So now I'm even more impressed and more grateful to the creators. But this is what people look like. So like, let's please represent it, and let's please celebrate and uplift all the different expressions of the feminine journey and the female journey. I don't know. I think that's super vital, and I'm so proud to have been part of something that is moving the needle in that way. Nice.
No, I'm really happy with that. And I'm just going to think of one thing, because obviously I know that you and Jordan Dawson were on mocap at one point. I've seen the photo of you two, and I've seen him on mocap. But I'm just curious, what was it like working with him? Because he goes from 1 to 100 in mocap, obviously, because Corey goes from like normal to like whack. What was it doing some of the sequences of him, seeing him just like literally go straight into that, pure like anger / frustration in the character and the way he projects himself?
It was a thrill. It was really fun to work with Jordan. As you say, he's a great actor and a great artist, and made a film for which he lived in a pit for, I don't know how long it was. Was it 10 days? Was it a month? But he, as a sort of fundraiser for his film, lived in this pit. So like a super intense, committed person, a driven and talented artist. And yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun to go toe to toe with him, because that's actually one moment where, there are a few moments actually where Nora puts her money where her mouth is, if you will, and she's talking the talk, but then she'll follow through. And it's when Swann, or any one of her her loves is being threatened. And that was fun. Like there were sparks when we were doing that.
Nice. No, I like that. And obviously, I think we can go on for mocap for ages, but I'm going to wrap this into one final point, which will be mocap and VO. And I'm going to kind of let Abby take the lead here because she was very, 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 very much enjoying all the TikToks around the singing and the concert sequence. So, Abby, I'm going to lead you, let you run here about the singing. Go ahead.
Well, I think you touched on it too. The realism of Lost Records, Amelia, is just so stunning and striking, and something that I think we haven't seen a lot of. But one of my favorite parts was just when all the girls were singing together, and they didn't necessarily care how they sounded. They were just having fun together as a group. So what was the experience of recording the singing parts like? Did you all do it together? Did you do it separately? Tell me more about it.
Well, anything that we've recorded was separately in the booth. But again, this is one of those situations where we had done the mocap previously. So we had the experience of embodying the scene together, singing it all together, doing our concert performance. Like Andrea and I did that concert for the warehouse near Park Metro in Montreal. And the small audience of our faithful team who was there, but it was so we felt the adrenaline of it, and we felt the freedom of it, and then hopefully we were able to capture some of that in the booth as well. And then when the time came to, sing the actual song, like sing Nora Kelly's song, I had been working so hard in preparation for that, and I was so nervous about it. And I had I had just the vocals, I had just the backing music, I had the combo thereof. I practiced tirelessly. And then I remember I went into the booth that day, and Phil was in LA, so he was over Zoom, but Michel and Luke were there, and a bunch of other people as well. And I did the first one, and I was so nervous, but at least I just got it out. We got one down. And then this is the dreaded moment when there's all kinds of whispering in the booth, and I'm sort of hearing them being and I was like, oh, it sucked, and they hated it. And so finally I said to Michel, I would often speak to him in French, but I was like, could I just take another kick at the can? And he was like, more like consulting with the panel. And I was like, because I was really, really nervous, and I just kind of needed to get one out of my system. And I think I'll do a better job next time. And he was like, you were nervous? And I was like, yeah, terrified, haven't slept for weeks in preparation for this day. I'm not a punk rocker. I was really nervous for today. And he was like, you get nervous? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, no. And I was like, yeah, I do. And he was like, no, but you're always the first one to jump in and the first one to lead the scene and to make an offer. And I was like, yeah, but dude, I was really nervous for the singing. And then he was like, oh, well, okay, go again. And then it was just a lot more grounded, and I could do it a lot more, I don't know, easily second time, third time, fourth time around. And then I think there was way less whispering after subsequent takes, because I think they were a little less worried that it was going to be such a failure. But yeah, but it was one of the most, I'd never done anything like that in my life. And, who doesn't want to be a rock star? Who hasn't at least briefly entertained that fantasy? Who hasn't found a drumstick in the recycling bin and played on their Tupperware as an 8-year-old thinking that they were going to be a drummer one day? We've all done that, right? So for me, that was my rock star moment. And it was really fun. It was really fun to try to do. And of course, having met Nora, I was like, I just got to conjure that spirit and believe.
No, nice. That's an amazing story. That's so cool that it played out that way.
And it's also, I think, what the girls are trying to do in that moment is flip the bird, if you will, at their small backwards town. And so connecting to that channel of rage was also part of what made it so satisfying, and also got me out of my head about the singing, right? Because it sort of became more about smash the patriarchy than it did about necessarily having polished vocals.
Absolutely.
No, nice. And Amelia, just before we move on to that as well, because I have even got in my notes that you can speak French, and you spoke French to Michel. I know Michel always said that he, I think Olivia said that Nina was part of some of her sessions, that she was like on a Skype
Mm-hmm,
call. She didn't see
mm-hmm,
her, but like
mm-hmm.
she had heard it. But Michel said in one of the interviews that he did for Gone Gold, then also just in general, he's always said that he's been very receptive to to the actors, suggesting change, where it's like we will tweak a line or do something differently because the actors might feel like this might be a bit more natural. Do you remember any moments in the game where you might have done that? And then also as well, I'm just kind of curious, what made you want to speak to French to Michel rather than just English, for example? Did you just do that straight away because you could do it and you knew he had a French background, or was that just something that you did later in?
Okay, so in answer to your first question, yes, there were several moments, and I couldn't highlight any specifically, but certainly like they were
Mm.
often, if something was just flowing more trippingly off the tongue in a certain way, then they weren't like overly precious about, no, but it's scripted that way. Like I think it was, it was a really organic process and a really generous
Mm.
team who would allow for that input, which was so cool. And then, I mean, I don't know. So, as to why, so I mean, Montreal is I would say it's a bilingual, like there's French and English, a lot of French and English here. I grew up sort of between those two languages. My dad was actually born in England. My parents are both of British stock, but in order to make friends in the laneway or la ruelle outside my house, I had to speak French from a very young age. So, and I think I was sort of always raised to try to meet someone in their language as a way to break down barriers and make people feel at ease. And I also love speaking French. And anyway, so I think that it was just without thinking, I was like, well, these are Frenchmen, so I shall endeavor to speak to them in French, whenever I can. And whenever it's not going to exclude Phil, for example, from the conversation, who's from LA and
Mm.
and doesn't speak much French. So we had, it's like you didn't want to like alienate people either. But in that moment, I in that day in the booth with the song, I think I could tell that he was stressed, and I was like, I'll just let him know. Hey Michel, j'étais vraiment
Yeah.
nerveuse. J'aimerais refaire une fois. And he was like, you were nervous? Okay, go ahead. So yeah.
Oh, nice. No, I because I've done a lot of interviews with the actors who've worked with Michel in some capacity, but I never had someone who's been able to directly speak French with him, which I think, obviously, as you said, will probably re-show him because English is his second language, French is his first, which is great to hear as well. And I kind of want to take you into one moment because this is a little bit of an interesting moment in the story, and I'll give you as much context as possible
Mm.
because you'll know the scene that you recorded. So it's where Swann can speak to one of the girls on the phone, and they're
Mm-hmm.
going to go down to Fawn's curse or rest, depending whichever one you pick. And on the phone, it's a little bit divisive because, for example, if you ring Kat, she says that Nora told her a secret, and then you can kind of pry out the secret. And the secret from Nora to Kat is that Swann smells bad. But then, for example, if you ring up Nora, Nora will tell Swann a secret where it's like, oh, Kat's on her period, but don't tell her. And it's kind of divided people where they kind of like changed a little bit, and the character was like, I don't know if I like that character. Just
Mm.
your interpretation. Do you just feel it's adolescent behavior of young girls because they can all do it? And then do you think it's just like they're trying to just maybe even like poke at Swann a little bit, be like, oh, we're going to tell her because she's that kind of character and she might say something to the other ones?
I mean, I certainly recognize that streak in teenage girls. I actually went to an all girls high school, and some claws can come out. Yeah. So I think maybe that's just part of like what makes the game real, is that even
Mhm.
among a really tight friend group, there can be subterfuges. And I think in some ways, Swan, well, yeah, I was going to say Swan is so pure hearted, but I sort of think they all have very pure hearts. But maybe somebody like
Mhm.
Nora likes to think that she's like a little more rough around the edges, or like, so I don't know if that's, and she often, and like, I think Nora often thinks of Swann as like younger and sweeter and more innocent than she is, even though they're probably actually closer in terms of their worldliness than she would care to admit. But yes, there is that perception that like, oh, sweet little Swann, you're so cute.
I could hear that in Nora's voice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just to project that scene then.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take you on another point, obviously, because like young Nora, as we said, like she has a very interesting personality, and one of the things is that, to kind of like put this as blunt as well, is very much driven by hormones and horniness, among many other things. And we see some of the scenes where she's like, she's like shouting at Kat, being like, take it off, take it off. I'm just kind of curious, those sequences in the booth and then even in mocap, was there even blooper moments where you were laughing because it was like it was just out there as teenage as it gets, of a character who's really hormonally driven? I'm just kind of curious what your experience was like with doing those, and if it was like a first take moment or if you had to do a couple more takes just because laughter erupts.
Oh, I mean, certainly doing the mocap, we had a lot of fun with those. And like, I mean, like teenage girls can achieve that kind of like unbridled, almost hysterical laughter that is just it takes you over, and then like you don't even know why you're laughing anymore, but everything's just kind of, the laughing is making you laugh. So we had like, it devolved into that certainly a few times, but then in the booth we were able to stay a little more on task because we weren't feeding off of one another's sort of like unhinged energy as much.
I was going to say Philip Bache would be like back on point because I know how he works.
Totally. But it's another moment where it's like, I was so grateful to be able to recall that, because you want the bubble of that underneath the actual lines that will end up in the game, right? So
absolutely. And also as well, obviously, adult Nora, young Nora, which character do you relate to, and then which ones did you really attach yourself to in terms of the performance that you felt?
I think that I really relate to adult Nora and her grief, if you will. And I think that in some ways, teenage Nora was like therapeutic for me to play, because I would say that, when I was young Nora's age, I had a similar kind of restlessness and dissatisfaction and rage, but I turned it all inwards, and it was cool to play a character who didn't beat up herself, but like put it outwards on the world and got mad at the world and put it into music. And I found that, that was unlike me at that age, but healing for me in a way to experience it that way. And then, I don't know, like adult Nora, I always felt when that time came, it was interesting because I think because she's so sort of, she's in such a different place from teenage Nora. I think Michelle was like, oh, I hope she'll be able to do adult Nora. But then we got to a point where it was like, for me, it was like slipping into an old pair of jeans every time it was time to switch over into that character. I was like, yep, here we go. This is home for me. That's how it felt. Yeah.
Do you also as well, because like later in the game as well, like Nora, obviously, as you said, she comes across as quite a complex character, especially in the adult form. And the way the game goes as well, for example, you can have like Autumn disappearing, like she might leave the girls after they reunite, and same with even Nora as well. And Nora is kind of a little bit difficult because of like how the way she is approaching, because obviously there's a lot of dread as well. Do you feel like that's also just something that people should kind of like really accept with her, like if they approach her, because like you can see trauma in her, you can see a lot of feelings and mixed bag of emotions? Like, is that something you wanted to bring through in the performance, where it's like this character is confident in certain respects because she's like gone off and become this, influencer, has something, but she's so multifaceted and layered with like complex feelings of like sadness and trauma and among many other things? Is that something you feel like you wanted to bring out in the performance?
Totally. Yeah. I think that there's a real fragility to Nora, which she has all kinds of defenses around. Like, I think she's a bit of a drinker. I think she's trying to do things to numb and protect herself. But I think that, if you can stick with her beyond that, there's a very tender heart underneath it all.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it like, oh my God, I was almost going to say Andrea and Olivia, but of course I mean their character names, which I'm totally blanking on now. But
Autumn and Swann.
thank you. Oh my God. I was like, Andrea and Olivia. No, yes. Autumn and Swann. They're there for her, you know, they get it. Like, I think they can be frustrated by her defense mechanisms, but they know that that's what they are. And there's compassion for, they are trying to access the friend underneath that outer shell.
No, I like that. And in itself as well, I was going to ask you, because you kind of just did something which that you forgot the characters' names. I was just thinking as well, and the experience that you guys had, because obviously, like, you guys see the concept art, you see things, they show you things, but then obviously, like, also you get excited where it's like, oh, there's the trailer and there's the game, and we're starting to see things. And I kind of just kind of call this the bleeding effect. Did you start seeing this where, like, for example, you started looking at Swann and you're like, oh, actually, there's a lot of Olivia's personality in that. And then, oh, I'm looking at Autumn and there's a bit of like personality from Andrea. Did you start seeing that in terms of some of the gameplay trailer and footage where it's like, oh, actually, there's like a lot of personality there? Or even if one of the actors said to you, it's like, oh, I can see a lot of Amelia and Nora right now, and I was not picking that up at the time.
I mean, I think 100%. I think that's inevitable. I think it's, you know, I think it's can be sometimes a bit of an occupational hazard, but I think always the vessel and the character imprint on one another. And again, because we held these women for so long, right? Like they were inside of us and traveling around through our lives with us, and then all of a sudden we'd get a call and it's like, okay, got another week of mocap to do. But they don't then just like evacuate your spirit, you know. And isn't it so telling that Autumn, the sort of most mature, mothering, adult, responsible member of the friend group, was also the actress who literally became a mother in the time that we were working on this project? Like, yes, there's a dance between, I think, the actor and the character. And I also just feel like, I mean, friendships evolved from these professional relationships as well, which is another gift of this project.
No,
well, speaking of that, a little bit more of a lighthearted question.
Yeah.
Who do you ship Nora with, as the kids would say, as a teenager and as an adult? Which character do you think fits the most?
This
is where the Sapphic community comes into play.
Yes, this is. You're welcome, Sapphic community.
It's so hard.
It's like
Well, I mean, so as an adult, I mean, I think as an adult, I don't know, because so then I also got this at the Don't Nod launch party / fifth birthday party. I was talking to this QA colleague, and she was saying how she was asking me about adult Nora's marriage and saying that there's like a text message that you oversee that says like, I really need you to call me back and sign ... And Alex was asking me like, is that divorce papers? And my mind was blown because I had no idea that little visual storytelling piece was in the game. And I was like, I don't know, am I not happy in my marriage? And is the sort of potential for reigniting things with Swann more alive than I thought? And then I was like grilling Mary about it afterwards, because I was like, why didn't you tell me that essential detail that maybe would have changed how I played certain lines? And she was like, I think we kind of came up with it after the fact. So that's just like, it gives you a sense of how in-depth the creation process is, and that even after the actors have left it, they're still refining sort of certain character and plot points. But all that to say, I think maybe I would ship adult Nora with Swann. Risky.
Could I ask you a bit more with that? Because people
please.
Obviously there are in that ship as well, people have always kind of been like, tried to defend it, because obviously they're two very different personalities. Obviously Nora is one personality, Swann's the other. What's your feeling on that? Do you feel like those two people could match together, even if they do have very opposite personalities?
100%. I mean, don't opposites attract? Like, isn't that a hackneyed old saying for a reason? No, I think that there's, you know what I think? I think that literally Swann sees Nora and has since they were very, very young. And that, yes, Nora loves when the camera's on her, but it's deeper than that. She loves that somebody is taking an interest in her, especially at you know, her home life in Michigan where she feels so invisible. I think that at that critical formative time in her life is just something for which she is always and forever grateful, and that she always has that special place in her heart for Swann forever and ever.
I like that. And I'm going
Yeah.
to ask you as well on that as well. The ship name, or one of the ship names, the community is still trying to figure out ship names, they're doing them.
Yeah.
But the one for Nora and Swann, and I
Snora?
want your rating on it from a scale of 1 to 10, is Snora, yes.
I
What are the
mean,
feelings when you hear Snora?
I'll tell you that teenage Nora would love it. She would love that there's a snore in there. And she'd probably try and like roll the R's or make it like Snora or something like that. But like Amelia is a bit like, can we not think of something a little more sexy? Like
We'll leave that to the community then. You can get ship names designed, one for the adult one for the
Yeah,
younger version.
totally.
Snora's very So obviously, Amelia, I'm time conscious because I know we've had you for a long time, and thank you so much for that. I'm coming on to my last two questions, and obviously Abby will come into hers as well, where she throws any in that she's got. But I'm just curious as well, in the game, the girls, obviously, you know this as well, the girls will throw things into the abyss, so all of them throw a different thing. Nora will throw a guitar pick in there, and her life doesn't take out the way that it wants to. But I'm just curious, if Amelia was standing there, what would she throw into the abyss?
Oh my gosh. Well, okay, so can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Do you both perceive the abyss as primarily a malevolent or benevolent force? Because this will inform my answer.
Oh, I could go down a rabbit hole here. So my feeling has always been it's a very much a trade-off slash sacrifice. It's not a wishing well. It's basically you throw something in and it gives and then takes, and it's a little bit kind of like a matchmaker. It'll be like, maybe we'll give you something. So for example, Nora wants to become a musician, but she gets the fame as an influencer, but she doesn't become the musician she wants to. So it's like, we'll grant part of it. But then if you're going to go down even more complex with me, I also said to Abby recently, because of how the game ends, technically there's 3 people in there that we think, at least with Nora, with Swann, Corey and Kat, that could be in there, because obviously at the end of the game, Swann ends the way it does. But my feeling has always been that I think that going forward with the way Michel will do things, etc., I think that the Abyss might even have a morality complex now, where, for example, Corey, who is, excuse my language, a shitbag, goes in there and is pure evil, and then Kat goes in there, who is the equivalent of pure happiness. So you now have a battle with the Abyss. So I'm very complex with what I would actually throw in there, where I think it could be also good or bad, or what it grants is in that moment. So, Abby.
Wow, great answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it acts sort of as a mirror, so it just mirrors the intention of the person using its power.
You can take off the microphone from the VO booth and throw it in there if you want, as a sign to Philip Bache, being like, I've had enough, Phil. Had enough, Phil. That was enough.
A mirror. Yeah. I don't know. That's such a tricky one. Because, like, I think in my own life, the story that I'm most invested in is that of my 7-year-old niece and how her future will unfold. And, you know, a big part of why I want to be involved in stories that center and uplift women is to just build a world where she's going to see the paradigm reflected to her of complex, real women. So there's a part of me that's like, would I throw a strand of her hair in there or something to that effect? But I would have to be absolutely sure that it would only do good things for her. So, but if it's reflecting my intent, as Abby promises it will, then that's what I would do. I would put a wish for my beloved niece, whose name is Dylan, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, into there.
I was just going to say as well, funnily enough, Olivia, we asked the same question, and she said she
Mhm.
would throw either her bunny rabbit's hair together or her friend Megan's hair in
Oh,
there, who
wow.
she had as a childhood friend who passed
Oh,
away, which is
wow.
quite
Oh my
interesting that you
gosh.
both decided something of a person, which is
Yeah.
good. So hopefully,
Yeah.
Andrea and Natalie are up next. Hopefully, we keep the trend going of throwing hair in there.
Well, because
Um,
you get this sense that it's living. It is living. It's a living thing. So I feel like it needs something living to match its spirit. I don't know.
Michel has been floating around dropping cryptic hints. We're starting to see things. I'm sure he's got some kind of something up there up his sleeve.
Uh-huh.
Um, I've got 2 questions left. Abby, have you got anything before we wrap up?
Well, we have the TikTok that we can have Amelia react to, but
Yes.
Abby, I have to ask,
Let me
are
see if
you
I
a
can...
musician? I mean, I see your guitars behind you there.
yes, I am.
So do you have your own cover of See You in Hell?
I don't, but I can make one just for you, Amelia.
Yeah, please.
So I'll show you this. I'm gonna probably have to do it as a separate clip and quit out because obviously
Okay.
it'll copyright things because of the music. But Abby is very keen on showing this, so I'm gonna play it for you, and then we'll
Okay.
get your reaction. So
Related to our series
Amelia
of
will...
questions.
Okay.
I can pull up a screen here for you. So that is Abby's TikTok clip. She was been laughing about it for ages. Like, I need to show Amelia this. I'm like, I'll show Amelia
Oh my
this.
gosh. You made that?
No, it's a viral TikTok.
That was
that
from
someone made.
Story Gamers Z.
Okay.
But what were your feelings seeing that?
J'adore. I love it. So fun. Were there like big drums in there? Or was that the distortion of the playback through?
That's Swann's camera zooming in and out of people.
Okay, I thought it was like punctuated with these big like booms. Anyway, love that. That is me and not Nora Kelly. So, wow, who knew? And I think some Andrea or maybe some Nat. Anyway, really fun. Love that.
To kind of wrap up here as well, just to kind of put it with that, I kind of wanted to know your experience with Philip Bache, at least, because you've worked with a lot of people and your experience of directors. I know he takes a very specific approach. Obviously, Olivia was like, I don't want to reveal all his secrets. As like, Abby, I was like, Olivia, I've spoken to enough actors to know what his secrets are now. But like, I'm just curious, what was your experience like working with him, and then how different it was compared to other directors you worked on your project, and if you took anything away from this project which made you think, oh, actually, I've never done that before in my acting career. A bit of a kind of like a reflection.
Wow, that's such a great question, and in fact, there are many within it. I really liked working with Phil. As I said, I felt so grateful that he offered me that kind of vocabulary of, okay, you can be the genie sometimes, but then we've got to put it in the bottle, because it was such a great image for me. And it also made me feel, particularly as somebody coming from theater to a more intimate medium, that I still had free range to sort of be myself. And I felt that way consistently throughout this project, is that I could just be me and I didn't have to fit myself into, a box of any kind. So, and Phil was a big part of cultivating that kind of creative space and environment for me. And I can't quote it verbatim, but he was big on the A and B takes, and he's like, go with your A, trust your B, or something like that, or trust your A, go with your B. Anyway, but very early in my career, when I wanted to learn more about voice work, I had worked with this wonderful coach in Toronto named Tracy Hoyt, and she said it as make a promise, keep a promise. So in fact, what Phil was promoting echoed that kind of early teaching that I had received of, right, like it's not quite the same as in rehearsals for a play, where I can, in one pass of the scene do something here, and then in the next pass of the scene do something on the other side of the world as that. It's kind of more, there's a little more shading involved than that. So that was a really cool thing to learn about that medium. And I think I sort of alluded to this before, but over these past 4 years, especially, I mean, Phil is a real, he loves the work, and he loves to actually talk about process and technique, which is fun. And it's not something that you often do with a director. You know, they sort of give you a note and you implement the note. But we had many digressions, you know, when we were taking little breaks where we would talk about how to execute a note, or what is the sort of what is the technique behind it. And those were really juicy conversations. But yeah, I would say that I have tried to liberate myself as I grow as an artist from the idea of having to do a good job and be motivated more by curiosity. Like, what can I learn? What can I share? What might be revealed to me through this? And it was beautiful that this became a forum where I could start implementing that over the years and be less stressed about like getting it right and be more invested in just showing up as I am and trusting my A and offering the B, if you will. So yeah, I think, I mean, I think that this project promoted that kind of evolution and growth, and gave me confidence, and then also gave me an opportunity to sort of implement and synthesize these ideas that I wanted to experiment with, like of just letting go a bit of some perfectionism and just showing up kind of a little more real.
No, I like that. It's a really fitting way to put it. And Abby, any question from you before I put my last one to Amelia and then we sign off?
No, please go for it.
Okay, so I even nicely in that entire answer that you gave us, Amelia, I heard a sentence about a box, and Abby loved this question as well. So obviously the box is the main part of this game, the Bloom and Raid package, and I'm just curious. Obviously we see what's inside it in the game, but I'm curious if the mocap actors were at the Blue Spruce or the 4 actors sat down at a bar and the box was there. What item do you think each person would put into it, and then close it, and then reconnect 27 years later and look into it?
Oh my gosh. What
We're
a
testing
question.
of each person.
Oh, Nat would put in her boxing tape. Olivia would put in an old hospital bracelet.
Oh, nice.
And I think Andrea would put in a little pacifier from her baby.
Oh.
And I would put in, what would I put in? What defined that time? Oh my gosh.
The expectations are here now. I thought you've picked 3 incredible answers so far.
There's a picture of the whole team, and in it, Olivia and I are on the first row, and Andrea and Nat are standing above us, and Nat has her fist in Andrea's hand like this, and I would maybe cut out the 4 of us and put that in the box.
So sweet.
And that weird
That's
kind of
amazing.
grip that they have, that like symbolized some of our days. It was like we were gripping onto each other like that.
I think it's a very fitting way to end with the sisterhood coming together, and I think it's a very beautiful response as well. So Amelia, thank you so much for your time. Obviously, it was amazing to chat with you about this and to hear your experience in the game. And obviously, people love Nora and saw all the great performances from the other actors as well. So it's just a testament to the incredible work that you guys did on this project. And we're really happy to have you here. So guys, we'll sign off here because we could otherwise speak to Amelia for about 4 hours. So we're going to wrap up here. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, one more time, please do drop subscribe on the channel, turn notifications, like the video, share with your friends, help support the channel, helps keep up to date with all the Lost Records content we do and all the podcasts. And the podcast is also available on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. So do go and rate us over there. Do go and follow us to get instant access to your episodes as soon as they become available. So one more time, Amelia, thank you so much for coming on. We really, really appreciate you having you on here. And it was an incredible experience talking to you about Nora as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your interest in the story and in these characters and in the people who brought them to life. It really means so much to me.
Thank you. And Abby, thank you as well for filling in for Adam as well and coming over. And hosting with me, which is always very much appreciated. And yeah, guys, we're going to wrap up here. So I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, stay tuned. We'll be back with another episode very soon. Take care, guys. See you later. Bye.